We run into what is science and what is spirit. So we are at a precipice of how science and metascience, how DNA and spirituality can come to an understanding.
Welcome everybody. Today we're going to have a session called Deeper Understandings. There is so much about our DNA that we are yet to discover. And today we'd like to really get onto that subject, the prime subject, not in between of specific races, but the prime subject of our DNA as the human species. Andrew, would you like to give as an intro, would you like to give a clarification of your perspective when it comes to what is actually DNA?
DNA is 80% memories. That's one of the first fundamental understandings science and spirituality are going to have to come to terms with. We live in a reality of photonic light that has a bunch of rules in it that says how photonic light beings incarnate, express, and exchange, and when they pass on, how they express and exchange in another scale. And the DNA is the encoding, and the soul or the light body is the cipher that encodes and unpacks the experience. And as we come back and many times over to the same type of living, after a while we store memories and DNA lineages. And this is how we go to the immortality aspect, where we keep getting born into a lineage that has our own memories in it and has our regular cell family incarnation process in it, so we can become bigger and greater beings of divinity and light. We also live in a time where they do not teach of our DNA lineage. They teach you of mathematics and DNA and RNA and how it can be easily changed and altered. Well, that is true, because DNA is still light in another form. It is visible on one spectrum and invisible on another spectrum. You know, when our consciousness reaches the peak of where we are right now in ourselves now, there's a part of our superconsciousness that is working with this reality, constantly encoding every microsecond of fraud time into light, into our memory. Memory is not physical. Memory, is it tangible? Is it electron? It is this form of light that has to be stored into an experience. We as streams of consciousness have thousands of subcarrier codes of millions of different experiences inside us. And all we have to do is tune into that memory, and we can go through that stream of experience at any scale we desire.
You've basically given us a synopsis of what it's all about. We are photonic light beings. We have been endeavoring to build up a heritage, build up an understanding, build up all these amazing memories. This DNA technology that we inhabit, once those DNAs are activated, those strands, we can do miraculous things.
Right. We connect to other layers of our consciousness that may not be in this world because they have learned to bilocate, be two beings at once, two strands of consciousness. So when you hear me say something expands to 4, 6, 8, 12, or 24 strands of consciousness, it's connected into its multidimensional self that already went through a separation of densities of cells to go to a multidimensional experience.
And that's the beauty, because once you have those memories, you are able then to, let's say, have a better master control over this DNA technology skin suit, which means you have access to be able to emanate and become all the understandings of the frequency equations, which means you want to be 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. You are thinking and you're there. You are able to split. You're able to hold residual image because you have all of those memories.
Heart-based, because we start in the fetus in the womb as a heart.
Right.
That is the beginning of the technology of incarnating photonic light to operate a DNA skin suit.
Right. So we always have that gauge and that 0 point, which is the heartbeat
as the fetus in mother's womb.
And of this planet, and then of this universe, then of the sun, then of the source.
Each scale going up and up and up when you were birthed into this universe.
Right.
Okay? I mean, people don't realize that most people come from other universes.
Yes. Yes. And the beauty of it is they came to this universe because they actually held within them DNA codes that allowed them access through the sun.
Right. Because there were other universal beings who had come from their universe and came here for an experience. And as they finished their experience in their universe, they went between the void between universes and said, all right, let's go. Let's get on the roller coaster ride. And they figured out how to come to the universal exchange point and be immigrated to this universe.
So then what we have here is we have an incredible technology that we're inhabiting, that we've forgotten how to use, that memories have been shifted, falsely imprinted, and then those that
skill sets have been removed.
Skill sets have been removed
from cultural training,
yes.
etc.
So that's we had the timeline genocides, which took a whole bunch of
that was an attempt to destroy
away.
The technology itself, which is assemblage of all memories. Because in the assemblage of all memories, you would end all processes of karmic exchange on this world, because this was a karmic retributing world from the original timeline genocide had created, where trillions of beings among billions of worlds all lost their experience because their fundamental architecture used our DNA, our actual DNA memories, as the soul code that allowed them to incarnate on a planet that was a brand new experience, with blank Akashic record world. The thing is, each I am presence becomes the apex of the technology. And when this I am presence chooses to go through an experience where we do not incarnate, or we pass over, or we leave this world, we get an update of our Akashic record of everything we've done in the soul. And we become one of those multidimensional parts, fully sovereign, fully expressive, yet linked to the whole. And if this soul, which is also a part of this sovereign spark, decides to put another version in as a brand new I am presence, then it is another bilocated version of me, because it's still related to me. It is still me. All of those other parts that interact, they know me, I know them. We're not in hierarchical order of each other, because we are the apex of our own individual sovereign experience, which is a part of the machine of the whole soul that is a stream of consciousness simultaneously existing on millions of worlds if it wants to be. It's a matter of understanding the agenda of each soul that it's going through its streamers of consciousness. Some people come to Earth to dream, to dream at the highest level, where they can connect to worlds that haven't even come into existence yet. One of Earth's great special abilities. And that's why we have DNA skin suits that function here on the surface and interact with the oxygen, which has programmed water in it, which constantly allows us to be manifesting consciousness stream beings here on Earth.
I remember that one exercise that I used to practice a lot, where I used to breathe the air, and I used to remember all the people that have breathed that same air as I have in all the centuries before me, all those times, and then to use that as a connection point to that ancient wisdom.
Another one is when you look at your own hand. How many ancestors have looked at their own hand? How many infinite people have looked at their hand in this world? We've all shared that experience. Where'd that hand come from?
wondering at the lines and how they change. What do they mean?
And
What
then
is the purpose of it all?
Those that come out of dream and realize that that hand is just another version of light. And they're surrounded by a world of light. Is that ground we're sitting on in these chairs real?
And you see, and this is what I think is the beauty of now discovering the DNA and the activating of the DNA. Because when the DNA gets activated, the capacity of your computer, the brain, is expanded 1,000.
Manyfold.
I mean, infinite when one wants to go there. And what happens is, as these strands activate, you activate more, therefore more strands activate. And the sun has a really big part to play in this aspect of our awakening, which is basically the DNA becoming and activating.
Well, there was a scientific experiment that was done a while ago between trying to see if they could use light to change DNA between frogs and lizards. And they actually were able to get, through the exchange of light, the DNA from a frog into the DNA of a lizard.
Yes, I remember that. It was a specific type of light. It was almost like an infrared light, but not quite.
They could get it to transfer.
And they did it also with a duck and a chicken in China. I remember this. I remember this version from the Asian aspects of my studies, and they actually started to see in the eggs a change.
Yes.
A change in what was coming out. It was almost like a duck chicken. And that was just by focusing the light through that one being onto the other. So here's the light, here's the being you're trying to imprint into this one.
And they successfully did it.
And they successfully did it. So the eggs being laid by this being here actually had DNA structure through the light particle transfer into the produced by that being over there. Quite incredible. Very, very good to understand.
The sun is doing the same thing and yet a different perspective. The sun is at a bigger scale of an astral world. It is what extended a contract to a galaxy to be a focal point of solar exchange where souls, solar, would come so that they could incarnate onto a world. That sun is portals to hundreds of other worlds where inside that sun are thousands or millions or trillions of beings who have lived on other worlds that are waiting to come and incarnate here, or using our sun as a waypoint so they can find other ancestors in other solar systems and go to incarnate. So the sun's light coming out is a representation of all the beings waiting to incarnate into our solar system. There is a being inside that sun that has your memories. And that sun is constantly coming to try to create unity. That's why we are in the machine that's going around the sun. So the more we are out in the sunlight, the more frequency opportunities for actual memories that are yours in DNA and other versions of yourself in the solar astral worlds coming into you, impressing into you a DNA lineage body that has memories of this lifetime, but it also has the memories of your mother and father, their mother and father, and their mother and father before them. That's the lineage technology. The lineage technology has been abused by the solar incarnation rule, by the incarnation rules of the archons. The sun is trying to overprint and re-imprint upon yourself who you are in full total memories, and to shuffle out and to remove the fake DNA memories from the lineage.
Right. I remember you talking about the sun being a a spiritual form of photosynthesis
Yes.
for the DNA molecular structure and strands of what it is we are. And again, you're bringing that forth again, especially now with our sun, where you say the sun isn't harming you. When we have those flares, they're massive downloads for us, and it's
Yes.
actually there to help us activate our strands.
People go through intense dreaming
Yes.
experiences during the solar storms. You know, have you ever seen a cat lie in the sun?
Yes.
What animals don't bask in the sun?
That's a really good question.
Just those.
Moles.
Just those that are not sun exposed.
Sun exposed, yeah.
Everything basks in the sun. And what happens when we bask in the sun, we go deeply relaxed. When we take this awareness of our consciousness, awareness of the reality, mechanics, and rules, we can make our energy body into a giant solar collector and begin to filter and collect our own memories and connect to that portal of sun that's been there imprinting on our soul for millions of years. It is like that ancient friend that never leaves and is always there to give you the shirt off its back or introduce you to somebody you haven't seen in forever.
And the sun meditations, I mean, they're really popular all across the world. In the morning when the sun is rising and when the sun is setting, that it's not too damaging for
Right.
your irises and corneas.
This is why I tell people one of the easiest techniques is close your eyes and still look at the sun. Allow those closed eyes to let the sun focus here on where your third eye is. And you will notice that a globe goes there and your natural eyes may just like trying to turn in. That's good. Allow that to happen and allow your deep breath to come to that point and expand so it fills your left brain and right brain with complete color of the light through your closed eyelids.
I've always found that when I've had the chance to really gloriously sit there in the sun and just be in silence, my questions get answered.
Yes.
The answers, all of a sudden,
Your
something will
subconscious
just...
unravels it.
It's amazing, and things seem so clear, and then I open my eyes and I'm like, oh, wow, that's really like, you know, the light's gone on, literally.
Exactly,
you know?
the light's gone on.
Quite fantastic, that phenomena.
And if you are strong with guided imagery as you're looking to that sun with your eyes closed, you can guide that energy that's hitting your face all the way to the very back of your brain, to the place where your medulla oblongata is, where your fight, flight, adrenal gland, lizard side of your DNA is, and turn it off. It's like a light switch, literally, light switch. And you could turn it off. And once you turn it off, that light will be saturating all parts of your body. Your heart will illuminate. And your heart may even try to come into your third eye. Or your third eye may actually go down into your heart. Those are wonderful, wonderful things if you can get those to happen through your own creative imagery. Because you're going to begin to realize that you started as a heart. And observing through that heart, you still had eyes.
So when we're looking at the effects, for example, of a sun solar meditation, how would you explain the physical and tactile effects of your DNA strands downloading, awakening? You've got 4 new strands, they're waiting to come in, they're waiting to be activated.
You can't perceive it like that.
Okay.
There is no way to perceive your individual strands because each strand is a layer of knowingness that you can tap into, much like hitting a program on a computer.
And that's the clue, right there. You've just said it. Each strand is a layer of knowingness.
Yes.
And that's where it comes again to when we were talking about what happens when the strands have activated. Well, we know how to then use our DNA technology to its greater potential, which gives us ergo then more knowingness, more expansion, etc., and so forth.
Once you get a new layer of knowingness, you must incorporate it into this layer of knowingness. That is the learning process the I Am presence goes to. It's the hierarchical order, and this new knowingness isn't questioning its hierarchical order.
And that's and that's the trick when
That's
a lot
the
of
trick.
people get stuck on. And because the first thing a lot of people ask you is, who was I and what did I do before? And you always say it doesn't matter what you were then, it's what you
are
have come to
now.
now. What is the sum total equation of all those DNAs, of all those experiences, of everything that has happened to you to this point that you have actually made it in this technology, in this time, in this moment of now? That is amazing.
Yeah.
Only the best of the best are here on this planet. And you know, that was interesting. I was reading yet again today from another lady that I highly respect her work. And she was stating, as we were stating as well, how important this window opportunity is from the equinox now to the solstice.
Yes.
We are, with all the equations of what's happening with our planets and our solar system and the way this Earth is rotating at this moment, and everything what's actually happening in inner and outer Earth at the same time, this whole process of this whole universe literally waiting for us to graduate. We have a golden moment of opportunity here between the equinox and this solstice to really, really help the separation of densities, to start to activate those strains in a manner which will be far less traumatic, shall we say. It will be a lot easier because everything is supporting that at this moment.
The solstice is when we get the most amount of sun of the year.
Yes.
Well, what was the equation of the sun we just gave you? DNA memories of yourself.
Yes.
Trying to give you connection to strands of consciousness, which are knowingness that are not in competition to you.
And so how do we best facilitate those with your contracts?
That is a global experience we are experiencing. That is global dream time coming to us. As we know, as we assemble to the 21st of June, after that, the days will be getting shorter. This is where consciousness explorers must target these days to have the most amount of regenerative time, so that as soon as that regeneration time is over, they become adventurers to the sun. They begin journeying to the sun, and that their remote viewing, their psychic operations, their disciplines are separate than the system. My sole focus of part of my meditation process is to connect to the sun now that it's at the waning point. So that on the 21st of December, I say I've done it 10, 15, 20 times since then, all of that time I have sought will be waiting for me on the shortest day of the year to give me the greatest density upgrade of soul before we recalibrate fraud time once again. So when I say people have 2, 3, 5, 7 strands of consciousness opening, that means each one has a new layer of knowingness. And at the end, all of them combined are another new layer of knowingness, which you must incorporate into yourself. And once we take in layers of knowingness, we must physically do something with the body because it is adding to the density of our soul.
And that's the aspect then of when you understand what science has so far, in the most minimalistic ways, has understood, is that the formation of your DNA depicts the formation of your cellular structures, the strength of your cellular structures, or any hereditary DNA weaknesses. So when we want to come to that point of the understanding that we really are, I am realized superhuman, when you start to realize that when the knowingnesses come and they start to then amalgamate here with this physical DNA technology through the light bodies all the way down, those understandings, those knowingnesses start to become integrated. And this is the 30-day thing that people talk about as well, isn't it?
Into the I am presence.
Into the I am presence, which then
who has a set of belief systems that may alter the knowingness.
And that's the photonic light then taking different gradients of equations to then create a different gradient of equation in the actual DNA molecular structure.
Correct. Okay. And then once there is the remainder, because there's always a remainder to infinity, that is what the I am presence has to deal with.
And that's why the journey is always so beautiful.
That's the journey, but this is where so many people get caught up on the remainder. They're stuck on the one lifetime, that's the one remainder that's made it through, and that's the big trap of the DNA lineage. Then we get to the next layer of, well, I am a strand of consciousness that is connected to all other strands of sovereign consciousness. Contract revocation in no time.
Oh, yes.
How do all of those other strands of consciousness respond? They assemble there as ancestors and go, hey, you're talking about sovereign soul shards and making sure all of us who are doing the best, are protected by the best.
Yeah.
And that we are assembling in density, increasing the soul spark connection, and anything that's not part of our density goes through a separation process. Separation of densities. So that all of us, all these multidimensional parts in the spiritual court of equity are agreeing on a common set of moral codes and are not stepping on other people's sovereignty and are not in competition with them.
How can, and that, that's the strange thing, this word competition. How can one be in competition when one knows that every single person is their own authentic signature frequency?
That is a knowingness.
And when you realize that there cannot be a competition. There is no
that's
greater than.
That's the thing. So many people reach a level of arrogance that its competition is an adrenal gland's choice. They're still in adrenal gland. They haven't mastered how to turn the adrenal gland off, because adrenal gland means what? You're not going to choose love first. Adrenal gland is fight or flight. Once you turn that off, you can go to heart-based love first and turn off their energy so that they never harm you or anything in your reality bubble. We have that much control when we're heart-centered. But as long as we're sharing contracts with something that's in adrenal mode, our heart center can be diffused and we're manifesting this reality and must take the hit direct to the sternum.
You know that saying, it's in their DNA, you can't change it. I would love to hear your version or your response to, oh God, it's their DNA, you cannot change it.
You can change your DNA at any time you choose. Okay? When you choose to make your DNA change, you are consciously activating your heart space to do what? Connect to more knowingness. Because ultimately, what is the change about? Getting a better awareness of what's around you. Getting a deeper understanding, ascending up into the astral worlds and leaving Earth behind and going back to somewhere else that you've never been to in this I am presence. But in fact, all you have to do is connect into your knowingness strands, and you will find other versions of yourself who have been to other worlds, who have left you notes, maps, even whole banks worth of energy inside your own memories, if you should choose to explore them in non-competition. You are still the apex of your I am presence. You are still the apex of your order. And available to you in your memory is countless other versions of I am presences who have done what? Just about everything. It's a matter of what you, this I am presence, wants to do and wants to be reflected as an I am presence other beings may come back to look on as a teacher.
Now, what's so cool about this whole aspect, though, when you think about it, is that our light bodies are there.
Always.
It's all there.
They are the ever-present neutral witness, waiting for the I am presence to link with it through technology and acknowledge the infinite awareness of observation.
So that's that proverbial picture where you see that man holding out his finger to that other man in the cloud sitting there holding it down and just reaching out.
That's right.
Reaching out. And how would we do that in this day and age? ceremony,
Ceremony.
heartfelt space, letting go of the program, letting go of the ego mind, and just recognizing yourself and loving yourself for yourself first.
And ceremony requires the body to let down.
Yes.
So many people are in adrenal gland reaction mode from the GMO, from all of the fear that's rampant within materialism, consumerism, that they don't know how to let down.
And you know, now that we've got the understanding that the DNA activation, the activation of these strands is actual knowingness, that's the physical understanding of it. It's a beautiful way because the DNA has been scientifically proven to be the blueprint of what we are. It creates the cellular structures.
Everything.
It creates everything, our hearing, our sight, everything that we are, that's what it creates. When we now have the realization that we're able to actually change our DNA, all those hereditary illnesses, where they say the sins of the father are passed to the sons, that is a fallacy. That is something that has been impregnated into your belief system to stop you from expanding, to stop you from exploring. You've just accepted it. And that's the tacit consent that Andrew is talking about. That's a prime example right there.
Tacit consent affects us on many different time streams and expressions. So we must be able to look at tacit consent as those beings who are going to be nurturing themselves and asking for help.
Right. And
we have given tacit consent away that says they don't exist until we say that they exist.
Exactly.
And once we say they exist, they're going to be expecting a light body program from you. That's that 20% of the 80% memories in DNA. So you have programs that are built into your body that tell the ancestors or tell the energy fields or the toroidal fields of the planet how to function with your light body. If you've been born into the wrong DNA lineage a dozen or 24 times, those programs are also screwed up. And those are the innate psychic talents that so many people have. Like the talent I have is because of the way of the light body programmings that were in alignment along with the physical karmic life that I led, allowed this talent to exist. There are others that are born with their programs that make them super empaths. Many people that fall into the autistic realm are their light bodies or make them, almost these just massive psychic interaction beings.
yeah.
And then there are other people that, their particular talents, aren't there that they're expecting in the DNA, and the world isn't working with them right. So they have to go from one mystical experience to the next and the next until they can find a signature frequency out of that mystical experience that reminds them of their soul's actual psychic purpose with the particular talents that they brought to this world with.
Right. So now we've got a little bit more of a clarification of your understanding with your knowledge and equations, with all the experience you've had by reading the records. There's still a little bit of confusion when it comes to the DNA strands that are the physical aspect that we can touch, and then the DNA strands that are the aspects of our light bodies, and all the memories that we were talking about of the different light bodies in the 1 degree and the 9 degrees of separation. Now that we've clarified that a little bit clearer, how we can bring it in, one thing again I want to reiterate is the power of the revocations that you create, because with this understanding of DNA being knowingness and this understanding of the manipulation of our photonic light and how we've been placed in particular lineages that have caused specific authentic signature frequencies to have real difficulty. Let's get into a little bit of, first of all, the revocation contracts and the understandings of how powerful that impact is on the light bodies and freeing up that path so that we can actually get that download of that DNA.
So each revocation begins with a prayer that opens a spiritual cord of equity, which is a signature frequency. Then it opens up another signature frequency that asks ancestors to be sacred neutral witnesses. And then it increases the scale of ancestors that are being witnessed, past, present, future, and it brings in particular signature frequencies that you want to remove from this I am presence order. because something is in competition to your hierarchical order. And those are strands of the system that we want to remove from our knowingness, because as long as they're in our knowingness, they're going to dump their negative energy upon us.
The proverbial DNA imprinting.
Correct.
Yes.
And when we use our conscious I am presence to declare no competition, zero karmic balance through infinite remedy and resolve through the ancestors, the process of justice and judgment becomes much less on us, as the system, which isn't a being but an amalgamation of beings and belief, cannot imprint upon you through the money curse as much as it did before. It can only do it when you're actually exchanging physical dollar bills, not digital. And as long as the system cannot put debt on you through digital debt, it can no longer harm you.
So that's the beauty of it then. As soon as we start to begin the practice of consciously clearing out our imprints.
It comes back to the buzzwords: conscious application of the sacred.
Sacred neutral.
No, not even the neutral. It's conscious application of the sacred versus recreational in everything that you do. And yes, it is a label, but it is a label of the times of now that makes us far more effective when the times of change are right in front of us and there is fear everywhere. And fear so rampant that people are afraid the world won't survive, when in fact it'll just take a handful of days as the energy's let down and the truth starts to come out once again. I call to all spirits that exist within our solar system that are part of our time travel and understanding of quantum interaction. We ask that your higher soul come in sovereign neutral witness to our sovereign neutral witnesses here in all expressions of dimensions, time streams, galaxies, and universe. Join us on this day of balance. We run into what is science and what is spirit. So we are at a precipice of how science and metascience, how DNA and spirituality can come to an understanding.
So here's a question for you. You said a while ago an audit was going to be made, or an audit had been made.
An audit at the universal source layer.
Yes, and
here specific for Earth. And that here specific for Earth is the nature of that audit question you're referring to. We have to understand what the audit is. It is an overall look at all spiritual contracts that are existing in the Galactic Ascension machine. For that one moment between the 21st and the 23rd of March 2013, all contracts were observed and determined that for all contracts to be resolved, a certain volume of karma would have to be done. And the system that was put in charge, that was to lead us to a final graduation date, had not graduated anyone that was in a particular expression of karmic retribution or resolution. And those walk-ins, our 700 million spread over a period of 12 months, are the ones that replace the infrastructure and middle management of the control system that is using objects and technology and belief system enhanced control systems to prevent us from going through DNA crystallization and awakenings.
So basically what you're saying, and that was part of the question, was when these walk-ins come in to the DNA technology that has been holding these contracts, what happens then is that these photonic light beings that are walking in, their sovereignty is much stronger, and they are then able to counteract the contracts and equations that these beings have created, giving us then a 0-point balance on what they have then put into this equation that has been affecting us so severely?
Yes, and to add some more layers to it, we have to get into the rules of walk-in mechanics here, and an understanding that a walk-in takes over all of the contracts, vows, and agreements of the being that they are walking into. Now, the audit basically said any being that is not in perfect zero balance at this management of the archon level was going to have an opportunity to be removed and walked in. That is something that the earth stepped in and allowed these walk-ins to happen, because there were beings that had no actual immigration to earth. These were extra-dimensional beings who had infested little human bodies here and had been pretending to be earthbound entities. So they were removed from human skin suits, and normal human souls or off-world souls, doesn't matter, were put back in that had the right signature frequency of the times to bring the auditor's resolution. This is how the management of the Illuminati control system would have power over its underlings to do their bidding, even if they were to use nuclear weapons on themselves. These walk-ins went into the fire marshals, into the repair people, to the people in the super space program, to the people that were the warriors, the thinkers, the generals. All of that management system of the apparatus of domination and control, its management system was where those walk-ins went into. And this is what creates the equation of balance of the self through the system itself. This is how spiritual sovereignty takes the power away from the system, so the system shrinks on itself. You know, for the longest time, the system was bent to one side. It has now reached a point with these walk-ins where it is 50-50, the battle between the good and the bad, and the indifferent that is being done between the good and the bad.
So with these walk-ins, how consciously aware are these beings that they're actually a walk-in? Like, these are photonic light beings, they take over this DNA technology, and now they're in this body. If you can, if it's possible, endeavor to give us an example of what that would be like.
In this example, with the auditor's state question, these beings would come in and immediately come into a DNA lineage that had memories that were not really theirs. And they would immediately go through a separation of densities where to their friends and relatives, it would look like they're going through moody times as they're trying to figure something out, and that they're showing habits because they are magical beings at that level. At a lower level, it would appear they were going through a rough patch in life, or a middle-age, confusion, where they go out and get a muscle car. So it happens many different ways. Internally, they begin to ask questions that their body programs don't have answers to, because the body that they've walked into, yes, its parasympathetic is different sets of experiences. A fresh walk-in does not have full awareness of their parasympathetic skills and things such as fear embedded into them. So there will be a internal dialogue battle between what is the body and what is the new walk-in exploring the parasympathetic.
So this is almost like an integration process.
Correct.
Where you have the different downloads, and then they're starting to find the compatibilities, and then the imprints started to sort themselves out as the original authentic signature frequency. Knowingness overcomes.
Right, and strands of consciousness that connect to unconnect other layers of knowingness that the body came built in with.
And then hence we start to have then the change in the DNA.
Correct.
And that's the process then. Now, this process, depending on the photonic light frequency and the strength and the experience and the condition, let's say, of the DNA technology they've walked into, this can be a couple of weeks. This can take 30 days or 58 days, like you say, for the blood to be changed. I mean, is there an estimated time, or is each one individual with source itself?
Each one is completely individual, though they come in with much more energy at the soul layer,
right?
Because they haven't been divested into all the belief systems. In actuality, they're the walk-in. They're coming to break that chain.
So the subconscious overcomes the conscious in the ergo printing.
Correct. They have a deep inner perspective that allows change. So it permeates everything that they're doing, whereas the being before could never see change because they were in total domination, that change couldn't exist. Their slave programming had completely overridden their light body.
So they had their eyes open, but their understanding and points of view were jaded through that programming.
Correct. And these new beings that walked in, they don't have the same perspective and they don't have the same programming. So they can create change where there was never seen a change before. And this is what will uncreate the system from internal. This is also what will stop the mass destruction weapons from going off, because the system won't kill itself now, because it has enough sovereign beings in the hierarchical competition management system that are trying to prevent destruction.
So basically what's happening is the auditor has created a counter equation to bring it to zero balance, so that those who have been involved with as a reaction, they are not the ones that took the action, but they were involved in the reaction, as in we were manipulated and et cetera, et cetera. We will then be able to have the true downloads and be able to then have the freedom to discover and entangle and then start to integrate, as these walk-ins are doing, start to integrate our other aspects of our other light bodies and ourselves and the memories, and start to become realized in this dimension with those talents and memories intact. Because they are pushing the free will sovereign aspect to the absolute
highest level.
Yes.
Thus such they create objects such as CERN to operate as belief enhancing systems or belief control systems or actual belief systems, so that people will not follow the natural way.
So how many DNA changes is our species at this moment experiencing through the switching on and switching off, the expansion and detraction and the sending of those frequencies out from sun on our planet at this moment, as we are beginning to get more and more from our sun?
You have to understand, when CERN turns on, basically there's a 6-layer toroidal field that suddenly appears around it. And then there are a dozen other large hadron colliders spread around the world that also turn on, and they create a polyhedral field around Earth that prevents a stream of light from the sun to actually go through our space-time.
So they're blocking
puts a bubble around it for a microsecond, so that particular stream of light doesn't actually make it to Earth. It just boop, goes
corrupted.
Through. It's missing data, yes.
Okay, so it's almost like Pink Floyd. Do you remember one of the covers of Pink Floyd where you have that triad with the prism and the beam goes in and then the rainbow goes out the other way? It's like it's being redirected.
Well, no, literally it's chopped. There's a 18-second, there's a second.
Okay, so the stream's being corrupted.
Corrupted,
okay,
correct.
Stream's being corrupted.
And it's doing this on, off, on, off, on, off, or it turned half of Earth that can receive it and the other half can't.
Incomplete download.
Correct.
Incomplete download, therefore the program won't run.
There you go.
Wow.
And that is why
activation.
They're trying to alter timelines on the surface so that people will go into a fear mode that something is happening, and the propaganda news is hitting the war drums, and the war hawks are saying that Iran and this and that, when in fact the storyline's going to change again, because they are still just trying to prevent our own memories from coming in. And if they can hold this out 10, 20, 30 years, they will do that, because the system is fully in control right now. There is no challenge to the system, even internally. Yes, there are good guys and bad guys here on both Hollow Earth and Surface Earth trying to do things, but they're in equal balance right now. Where it was never an equal balance before. It was much more slanted to one side.
Well, that was the proverbial Mayan calendar where we're going through the darkest and densest of energies, and
The
now we're
nine hells,
lifting.
correct.
Yes, and now we're lifting up out of it. Now, this is interesting because when we start to talk about the inner and outer Earth, and it's all about the DNA. It's all about the DNA. So tell me, it was foretold that after the audit, many of these powerful figures after the audit would have walk-ins coming in.
Mm-hmm.
What happens there with those DNA lineages? Now, this is where it gets really kind of cool because these walk-ins come in. They're destined to do that. It's been destined by, the being that did the audit, the entity that did the audit. And we then have the DNA of that technology that they've now walked into with the contracts, vows, and agreements intact, with the DNA programming, 80% memory. Tell me, how much memory do these walk-ins have? And when they walk in, do they activate a whole new strand of DNA in that specific DNA technology that they're walking into?
Very unique question. And we must get into the mechanics of a walk-in to understand that. When I was referring to, what you're referring to is they were asking if an archon could have a walk-in in it. After the audit on the 21st to the 23rd of 2013, 700 million over a span of 12 months, walk-ins came in. And those...
And when you look at all these different understandings of how it all comes together, how many different species there are out there, the unlimitedness of everything that we are, and how many different races rely on us, our DNA, practically for their survival. Now, here's a question for you. This species, or actually quite a few of the species, they went very intellectual, they went all into the technology, and they disconnected themselves from the tree of life. Would one say that that is then a disconnect from Source itself?
It was a sovereign free will expression of the time that they were warned not to do it. But their goal was to jump in evolution and have the same type of experiences that we had here. They had created technological worlds that could simulate Earth, and they could simulate the experience, but it was more cartoonish than our world was. And they wanted that HD. And the only way that they can do it was forcefully entangling with us. Therefore, they created technology that will allow them to quantumly unentangled observe us. And once they unentangle observe us, they could peek into where our DNA was growing and enter our social streams of time, which are our agreed time, and use their technology to force incarnate themselves into a being who used to live in their world millions of years ago, because that being still has the signature frequency of their original home world. That's like all of a sudden telecommunicating to something in the ancient past before the thing communicating was ever created.
Was ever existing, yeah.
And they were able to entangle with that and exchange DNA.
That is, it's almost like you can't rush it. And that's where the collapse came.
That's where it collapse came.
Yeah. Fascinating. And so now with the audit, we're now getting the counter frequencies and equations. We're now getting everything to zero balance. The separation of densities has begun. The false imprints, the opportunities for us, should we so choose to emanate such a will, are there now for us to clear away these imprints in our DNA, clear away the blockages, deprogram the things that are covering our eyes so that we can see what we've not seen, and that we can know what we've not known.
Look at the architecture around you. And understand, if it's a negative sacred geometry, you can flip it. You can change it for the better. You are conscious manifesting beings, and you just have to understand, are you doing it recreationally, or are you doing it sacredly? Recreational energies can be very powerful and very dirty. And there will be a time where people do things recreational for fun, like surfing. Okay? That's a different kind of energy work. We are at a time where making our lives sacred connects our consciousness strands and knowingness, so that when we want to have those recreational times, all of our light bodies are enjoying it too.
And that's the beauty of that concept of, really bringing forth the understandings, because as one starts to integrate and activate the DNA strands, you are so more empowered over your own experience. And the more empowered you are of your own experience, when you set up that frequency equation of whatever you engage to be joy and bliss, when you do the recreational, it is 1,000 times more expanded.
Yes.
Why? Because it's been propped up by great mystery. She's all for it. Why? Because you've created it that way.
And the chemistry of your body's working in communion with you and not against you because of chemtrails and vaccinations.
Indeed, indeed.
Hota yatata hacha, kamupa yita, hochana, kachawata, shimonata, jekota, imananaka, wacha cha chamata, chikana hoch, chana, shimonaka, autika, shomohotoka, chawanati, cheko, chanatu, ashna, uki, yateta, chumahata, ismana, chamoka, hatachimo, winjinahacha, chawina, chinahachawata, shawakia, ush, ata, ush, yete, ho, yayaka chamo, kamja, shamota, sheta, hatu, katomachahacha, cha motecheki, nanaku, chanakawata, chakawa, chiteha, shashiyana, wa, yikecha, washna, momata, yanata. We run into what is science and what is spirit. So we are at a precipice of how science and metascience, how DNA and spirituality can come to an understanding.
You know, the photosynthesis of the sun and how that affects our DNA. Let's talk about the children that are coming to this planet. You know, we talk about the indigo children, we talk about the crystal children, we talk about the rainbow children. These are subjects and titles we give specific types of DNA that have reached a certain point of activation already, correct?
They have enough strands of consciousness that it equivalates to them that label of color or crystal or whatever you want to call it. An example in indigo is one that's coming in the indigo color frame. It means all other colors it's already experienced. If somebody's coming in as a rainbow, that means they've existed in everything that's already a part of the galactic ascension machine. They are moving paradoxes of their own resolution of karma. They create portals. They're the ones that are the most powerful blood types. So whatever you want to call them or label them, they are just streams of light consciousness that come in with non-competitive other strands of consciousness as a part of their I am presence knowingness makeup.
So they are streams of consciousness that come with other streams of consciousness in their makeup. Therefore, the amount of photonic light activating this DNA technology gives them perhaps insights, understandings of different ways of information than, for example, their parents would?
Here's a breakdown. Let's use a computer terminology.
Okay.
You have an artist that learns to paint by hand, and then you have somebody that learns to paint by Photoshop.
Yes.
So the artist who paints by hand is limited by what they can physically purchase. Those on Photoshop have all of the tools immediately there.
Yeah.
That is the difference between an indigo and someone that isn't an indigo. They have a program built into them that a strand of consciousness innately knows how to use that Photoshop program.
So we have the different aspects of these different DNA strands coming in, and people tend to give it a label. So every authentic signature frequency is an individual.
Correct.
So there, you can say, well, that's an indigo type. That's a crystal type. That's a rainbow type.
They've gained a level of soul strand connection. That would give them the equivalent labeling.
Okay. So how would you define indigo, crystal, rainbow types? What would be the definitions to differentiate them?
The dimensions in which their strands of consciousness are connected to, what part of astral portals from the solar locations that they came from, are they being refracted to 2, 3, or 4 suns before they actually get here? Because all suns are interconnected, so if you have a soul strand that is 19 suns away, it is 19 solar degrees of separation, but it is also only 1 degree of separation of being a part of you again, because there is no distance between streams of consciousness. As long as they are existing in light and connected to the portal of the sun, and they are connected to the portal of any other sun that's out there, if that light has the right code to go through in refraction.
There is no distance in consciousness.
None.
As long as our sun is free and clear and not being blocked, our 1 degree of separation can be 19 degrees of separation because there is no distance. So as long as we emanate and create the matching codes and frequencies,
we can
then always exchange and become. So what the experience is over there, we can emanate this experience then here when we know how to join again and connect.
When an indigo crystal, an indigo child comes in, they could have come in as early as 1930. Okay? They came in as an immigration pattern. meaning that the world in totality was going to be outbirthed by beings that had more strands of knowingness coming out at birth that the birth canal of the great forgetting wouldn't take away. This is where technologies were developed to prevent indigo children from naturally incarnating and to be forced into the reincarnation grid, which they rapidly became at the tops of those grids. That's what the original indigos were going to do. So by the time the 60s came around, you had a counterculture revolution that ultimately was hijacked by the existing revolutionaries, which were the cultural controllers of that time. But the cultural controllers of that time were also fighting their own cultural controllers that dated back many hundreds and thousands of years, where many factions stepped forward and brought DNA lineages to those 60s and 70s that brought new strands of consciousness, because you had people that were heavy musicians that as soon as someone saw this musician in a public format, a strand of consciousness was returned to them, because that particular musician had tens of thousands or millions of spiritual contracts to be, at that time, exposing folk music so that a strand of consciousness became into knowingness. Whether it's you learn to play the guitar or you sit back and listen to the music and understood that these were the days that you get to outcreate the system, because it can only react to you. It cannot predict you anymore.
And that's the beauty of it. It can only react to you. It can't predict you anymore. So therefore, when you start to truly emanate your own sovereign authenticity, you are then not social consciousness anymore. You're not the program anymore.
Correct.
You are your authentic being. Therefore, ergo, you are unpredictable, because there's only one of you. You can't be predicted.
And that has responsibility.
Yes.
And that responsibility is spiritual hygiene. Something many indigos have very strong issues with, because part of their source knowingness connection is that spiritual hygiene is one of those temporary things. That until the change in consciousness happens, it is something that is skill-based and discipline-based. And it's not that indigos aren't skilled or discipline-based, they're just in a different strand of consciousness that does not see expending that skill base and energy when they can be doing all these other things of exploring. Until all of a sudden their baseline of connection is gone because it's been attacked, or they ran out of energy and they can no longer expand and explore the realms, and thus indigos quickly shrink out of their psychic talents and become stuck, odd, difficult, eccentric. They think that they're targeted when in fact they're not.
They've created basically their own,
Correct.
demons. Yes.
Created their own demons. Crystals, they're a little bit different. They're, by the end of the 1970s is where they started coming in. How do I describe this? They're the artistes of digital world coming into shaman world. They're the ones that are going to figure out how to do that at the cell phone layer. They're the ones that figure out how to get a whole bunch of people together at one moment in time and use their cell phones as a sacred object of ceremonial exchange. Could we do this now? Yeah, but a bunch of 40-year-old adults with their cell phones don't have enough belief that that phone is going to create a ceremonial system.
But we have begun there,
Right.
because there is enough belief that people can download specific sacred geometry symbols that protect them from the emanation of what that cell phone. But it's a beginning. It's a step.
It's the innocence that creates the original portal.
That's so true.
And unless we adults are returning to a huge state of innocence, we aren't going to use that. We're going to use a physical ceremony to do it. Because that's what our knowingness strand tells us to do.
Yeah.
The crystal's knowingness strand, it knows of spiritual hygiene, but it also has a better way of clearing it for itself. So it can have moments with technology and work with the system, believe it or not, to give it resolution. Where many of those that aren't in the crystal or the indigo, they don't have a strand of consciousness that can interact with the system.
Right.
So that's the crystals. They have it built in them. They can manipulate the system just like daddy's little girl.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay?
yeah, and for them it's just innate. They see the equation. There is no veil in front of them stopping that synapse firing that part of that structure called the brain that will then allow them to look at it, and then find out the counter frequency to get them the equation that they are calling forth,
Right.
rather than what the system depicts.
And the negative side of crystals is they often get caught into obsession or become zealots.
That's right, because then they either believe that it's their sole job to do it, and they become what they are fighting.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then worse, and if a crystal is abused as a child, it's the worst for them.
Yes, it's really hard to get
their
over.
imprinting, it just totally counters what they are, and they break down, and oftentimes they walk out at that point. So crystals and indigos, they both have about an equal walk out to walk in ratio. And then we have autistic children that are both indigo and crystal simultaneously. And they're a whole different expression. And then there are, other colors that we can talk about.
The rainbow children that's been coming up recently a lot.
The rainbow children, that is an amalgamation. Anyone can be a rainbow at any time. They're the warriors of peace. They are the ones that have been time traveling for countless generations, looking for a DNA lineage that they could anchor in, that they can survive more than one lifetime in, to gather a set of bank of memories so that they could build a mausoleum, so that other versions of time-traveling selves of them can come to a mausoleum where an I am presence declared no competition.
So hence the equation of the word rainbow as the best descriptive of this DNA strand, because they've been in all the different colors of the
Correct.
frequencies, they've been in all the different colors of the rainbow, and now they're basically looking for anchorage.
Correct.
Right.
Coming home.
Coming home. Yeah. Intact.
As we go
Beautiful.
through separations of densities, as I was saying in the beginning of this, the density of your being. So when we are third density beings now, we're dealing with a third density, a third dimensional world. To go to fourth density means we have gone through the separation of the third density, and we are a fourth density being where we are not dealing with shame, blame, and guilt as definers. We are our own sovereign bubble of reality being that understands the sacred energy is its own spiritual technology that must be used in sacred manners. We also know that fourth dimensional technology allows us to incarnate direct to other worlds, bilocate to direct to other worlds without the use of technology. And we have an actual choice as multidimensional beings to take the technological road or the spiritual road, or both at the same time. And when you meet on the other side, you come back together again.
Ergo, Atlantean, Lemurian, and that ultimate combination of the
There you
both
go.
in a very basic form.
Yes.
One was super technology, the other was super spiritual, and we're still having that constant battle
Correct.
of how to integrate it. But there is no battle, because this is a sovereign free world universe.
Correct.
And after all the genocides, integrations, we are so mixed up that whatever lineages or lines through the system, we've been so integrated into each other's lineages and lines. We are so unique in ourselves that this whole process is going to call about an incredible change in how our reality will actually look.
Each individual being will go through the reverse engineering of that hierarchical order in themselves.
Yes. And then what kind of thought process, what kind of realities, when the consciousness and energy starts to understand its creation, this holographic universe, when it starts to remember, when it starts to see the unlimitedness, what a world this will be.
That is the mind in the proverbial over-unity. Much like an energy device that has reached universal energy source, like a Tesla device. Those devices are consciousness, and we are consciousness. And we can create our own psychic Tesla machines inside our own mind once we begin to go through that realized self moment, that we can reverse engineer hierarchical order and prevent competition in my sacred space.
And therefore we are now the ancient future now.
Now. Ancient present now, ancient past
present
now.
Yes.
All three combined into the now at a universal time scale.
And you see, and this is where we come to the fact or the understanding that this DNA is so magical that there is a trade going on, and there are specific DNA lineages where this trade is rampant, and there are specific DNA technology skin suits that have been taken off planet and need to be encased in gold. Otherwise, the actual dis-ease from the physical particle manifest of that DNA lineage technology structure could cause millions upon trillions of deaths when they were exporting these bodies out for their DNA. But then you're also saying that this DNA could save all multiple lineages.
There's a couple of different things you put together.
I know, I'm
there.
sorry, there were so many things I wanted to cover.
So to break it up, there is an off-world DNA trade, and that off-world DNA trade is for light body memories. So off-world, you have thousands and thousands of species who are trying to mimic our DNA or get samples of our DNA so that their experience is as colorful as ours on their world, so that they can begin altering their worlds and realities at the programming and architecture level so that their worlds are as bright and colorful. Well, to do that, they need solar code, so they need to meet other versions of ourselves and have true love with them and have some form of DNA offspring or memory sharing technology that allows them, as a light body, to use that as a solar code to incarnate in a world. Let me finish. It's important, okay? This is so vital to understand that once you have a DNA memory, you can break yourself into 3,000 or 4,000 pieces and go to a bunch of worlds that you've never been to before and begin to summon all of your other parts until you begin to outwave and spread. This is how our DNA was abused from the very beginning. The other part to your question was some people were taken off-world. There was stuff in the DNA. For a body to go off-world, it is encased in gold to prevent damage to it because they are using dirty dimensional drives to prevent the people observing the quarantine field from seeing these vessels that are taking millions or billions of different samples of DNA off-world. Each sample of DNA is a sample of your consciousness, and sometimes your consciousness is put into clones of yourself. So this is why many people feel themselves in other worlds, because they are connected to other version of clones, which are part of the quantum chaos entanglement technology. So we break it down to the next part of the question is, when a human being inside their own DNA here on Earth has other versions of itself existing in other places, quantumly entangled with it, we run into a unique paradox where you could have one that is taken off that has a sickness. And that sickness, in other situations past where they were smuggled off, there was a program built into their DNA that made that sickness very effective against other worlds, and it caused the deaths of trillions. So this is why a major quarantine field was put around Earth, so that these times where human beings that were smuggled off and caused sicknesses. Conversely, we have other races who have been genetically engineering themselves over many millions of years, and they've made grave mistakes. And the grave mistakes is they have eliminated their sex organs and become disconnected from the tree of life. They use cloning chambers. Their children come out as adults. They don't have a life. The mother has not had swollen feet, has not been pregnant, has not had the birth process. They now want to bring that back into themselves, and they need a sample of DNA from someone that has lived in their species before, which could be you, me, or you, and they need to get a sample of you here now, fraud time DNA that has sex organs, and then bring it back to their home world, manifest it in their home world, and insert it into a DNA lineage that can allow a brand new soul to come and live in that soul family or species. Once they lost their sex organs, they were locked out of the incarnation and reincarnation process. They were a technological breeding species. They are trying to return that. Human beings, when we finish our awakening, will be the ones that teach these species that no longer have sex organs how to be pregnant, how to have swollen ankles, how to raise children. That's our gift back to them by us openly sharing our DNA with them, because they're the ones that have been in competition with us to forcefully awaken us long before we should have, or to forcefully put us back to sleep, because there are others that were worried about if this species is in competition with this, and that this DNA is not ready to be awakened. Its soup hasn't been finished cooked. So we have to break down all of the different scenarios that we have to understand that the DNA trade is about hierarchical competition between other worlds that aren't really in the best interest of who lives on this world now. And the reason the quarantine field was created is to prevent that competition of other worlds from affecting us and from us affecting them, because we are quantumly entangled to all of them. And we have time travel technology that has separated us into 4 paradoxes. That means we have a chance of making another uncreational event.
That's really amazing. Now, here's a clue. Andrew has just given us a very big clue as to why there is a magnetic field around this planet, as to why there is a quarantine field, as to why we're having such a tough time remembering, as to why there is so much technology and white noise out there stealing the energy from us, our photonic light feeding off it. There's a clue there, because what if we had enough energy? What if we were spiritually clean enough? What if our heart was beating to that rhythm of that solar universe that we're expanding and expanding in? And what if we were able to call all of those shards of ourselves and those experiences, and we were able to go to those journeys, receive those energy banks, get those understandings and those gifts? What would we be as a species then? Would we pay taxes?
We'd be the phoenix reborn. Out of the ashes of materialism and consumerism would come a brand new generation of consciousness explorers.
And that's why we have those chemtrails blocking our sun. That's why we have those processed GMO foods stopping the crystallization of our DNA strands.
That's why they vaccinate you. That's why they do all sorts of birth rituals that separate you from your mother and your father. Whether it's the foot stamp and the Social Security card that makes you energetically bound to the money curse, or it's the ancestral karma that comes of getting born into a lineage that doesn't have your own memories in it.
And that's, I mean, all of us have had to learn that, especially when you're really, really passionate and you're awakening and there's so much you want to get into and there's so much you want to do all of the time, and then all of a sudden you're low on energy. Why? Because you've lit up and you haven't done the correct ceremony, or you weren't truly prepared. And that happens to a lot of people because they don't have those surroundings and those understandings, and then they get hit.
Or they don't even have a knowingness strand or consciousness to even begin to perceive what a ceremony should feel like.
Yes, and with these concepts that we're bringing forth, with these ideas that one perhaps may try if it resonates with them, is the understanding to be gentle with yourself. Learning how to be gentle with your own progress, gentle with yourself. No shame, blame, or guilt there, because that's the number one thing that stops people. You know, the disappointment, oh, I didn't do it right, or, oh my God, everybody around me is stopping me from ascending, and all those types of things that stop us in our own, I don't want to use the word ascension, but our own expansion of consciousness.
Expansion.
Yes.
Now that you can see that, you need a little help sometimes.
Yes.
And that is calling on your ancestors. Being gentle means willing to ask for some help, but with enough bravado in your voice and not meekness, so that the ancestors come with the power that you're asking them for.
And that's the beauty of when you begin to live, as you say, in the sacred fashion, and you come from a heart space, not just doing it like, oh yes, I've done my contracts and off we go, but literally
It's regular.
saying,
You have to do them regularly.
it begins now.
Right.
I sit and I read and I focus, and I am actually sensing, feeling, and emanating those words that I'm uttering through my heart space soul.
If you are not emanating, you are not in the spiritual process of being there with bravado.
And therefore you're not emanating the frequency in the equation, therefore you're not clearing the density and the imprinted frequency and equation, and that is what is making it so tough for all of us because of this shifting around of our DNA lineages and our authentic signature frequencies, the blockages that we've had. This is where it really counts. This is where we can clear this all away with ceremony, with these contracts, and really then call forth what is inherently our birthright.
Which is invocation, which is the next side. For every revocation, there is an equal invocation.
We revoke to clear so that we can invoke what is, that is ours.
So the next layer, once we revoke and invoke, we must hold anchor.
Indeed.
That is where the next layer of spiritual courts of equity help us deal with time. And it's how its social agreement locks us into the past life expressions of energy being given forward to us, because there are government time travelers purposely entangling other versions of ourselves with karma that we created and solved millions of years ago, but now is suddenly be given to us as debt, because an organization is using universal laws to create more debt and pass it around in a future time it was never meant to exist.
I mean, these are really exciting times, and I think this is why Andrew wanted to get into a deeper understanding, to impress again this window of opportunity we have. It's really here, and it can be so easily reached. Each day it becomes more expanded and more expanded as the beings awaken, as the doorways and the grids, as people are starting to engage in the great work, still connected, are emanating and expanding each other's fields and connecting in a glorious way, which then pushes more and more the density away, so that others that are awakening have an easier process. Because all of us who went through the really hard times, I mean, I've said that to you so many times, I wish that every being that is starting to awaken, it's almost like the lamb being born in a beautiful field where the birds are singing and the grass is green and the flowers are smelling so beautiful and the bees are buzzing around, and you wake up to the multicoloredness of your being, the multidimensionality of your being, and it's joyful and you're filled with the love of all that is in great mystery. I wish this for everybody. And when they awaken, I hope that we've created a field for them that is that kind, that is that that is that gentle.
That is a dream I think everyone can do.
Yeah.
I think we all can manifest that there shall not be another starving child.
No more.
There shall not be a moment of depression over war.
Yeah.
We can end war tomorrow as a species. We just have to either pick up the pitchforks and torches or choose to be consciousness explorers.
Indeed.
The old way or a new way. And the new way doesn't have to be the new age way. It's your new way. And this is something that I put forward. You are the sovereign individual being. We are trying to show you they have a plethora of toolboxes out there to build anything that you want. Just understand, your knowingness helps you build. That's why we're trying to give you some of these mechanics direct from the Akashic record, so you can go through your own knowingness strands connection. Get out there and be in the sun. Get out there and let your DNA awaken and do what it's meant to do. Let go of the fear. And if there's a chemtrail in your way, wish it away, will it away. You'd be surprised how much a little consciousness entangled energy can make that chemtrail disappear.
That's right.
I envision children writing their name in the sky with those chemtrails just to tell the system off.
Let's bring that forth. Indeed. Thank you, everybody. This has been so much fun, just getting into this and covering all the different topics. I feel so much better now that we talked about this. Yeah. There are so many things happening, and this is just so vital to understand why we're pushing the ceremony so much, why we're asking people to go outside, why we're saying look up into the skies, because the time is now for you to expand. Last
year we pushed hibernation.
Yes.
This year we're pushing a whole new layer of expansion and awareness. If you didn't hibernate last year, you can start right now and catch up with everyone else. It's not that hard. Consciously apply, are you doing something sacred or recreationally? That's the one thing you can get out of all of these teachings. Are you doing it for yourself in real fullness of authentic self, or are you just doing it to have a better understanding of it and its recreational experience?
Is it en vogue, or is it who you are?
Okay, because if it's your authentic self, you will begin manifesting out of that. And yes, there are times that our recreational selves manifest, but it isn't always a seed we want to reap later on in life.
Indeed. With that, guys, namaste.
We run into what is science and what is spirit. So we are at a precipice of how science and metascience, how DNA and spirituality can come to an understanding.